Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of The Unwatched Pile. Movies falling everywhere. I'm Stephen Billings, and with me is, of course, Andrew Cabral. What's up, man?
What's up, man? Good to be back here for the Unwatched Pile. I noticed that you mixed in a little new intro music.
Well, I told you
Right?
last time that, we're going to do it'll be new music because the old music kept getting copyright stricken. So,
Right.
so
Yes.
yeah, I switched it out. This should not be an issue with this one. And this is the new theme music for
It's
The Unwatched Pile.
giving a, like, Nintendo video game music.
Yeah,
You know
it's a
what I mean?
little bit of that. It's to me, I was going for like retro. Like I felt like I
Yeah.
wanted a retro vibe, like something that you would like maybe have heard like in a video store or a video game. Like I mean, it's in that realm. Yeah,
Very much retro. And what is interesting is we do talk a lot about older films here anyway. So if anything, it is almost kind of retro-ish type of show. Not quite as retro as movies down memory lane,
no.
which will have a new episode later this week. So for those of you who haven't seen the first episode of Movies Down Memory Lane, that is currently up on the channel as well. But
It's my turn. It's my turn next. I'm
yes,
excited, and we haven't announced it. I'll make a post, but our next the movie we're gonna do for it is live Saturday live. That's gonna be the routine Saturday nights. It's like when you're like with your friends and you want to watch a movie, late night with your friends on Saturday night. Well, you're gonna talk about movies that we love together on Saturday night now, and we're gonna be doing School of Rock. It's a favorite of mine. I think Andrew really loves it too.
mhm,
I don't know about Dan. We'll see what Dan thinks, but
right.
it's a really, really, I love that movie, and we'll get into it. So come join us for that one. But Humboldt does love the new intro music, so thank God.
Thank you for noticing.
Yes.
Yeah, we would always get a random like copyright tag, even though the music we had chosen originally was from like a pool of, copyright free music. So,
Well, it
you
was
know,
from like Canva, and Canva
okay.
is something where you create things, and you assume that music is usable because
Yeah,
they're giving it to you. But I guess maybe there's certain limitations to that, but it doesn't matter now. We should be in the clear. I'm also going to make sure next time we do this show, I'll have a more official background for this. Now, I know it's chasing labels. It's the umbrella.
right.
It's the name of the channel, but I would like to have a themed Unwatched Pile background here. But once again, we do not have a guest. It's been tough having time because I've been working on a lot of other stuff, normal life. But next month we will have. I already planned to have a guest, so that's already set up and in the books. So, but this week, just me and Andrew, and along with doing our normal Unwatched Pile, at the end of the show, we're gonna do a little extra tag on of just a fun little short discussion about some of our favorite Tom Cruise movies that are not Mission Impossible. Of course, the final Mission Impossible film is coming out this weekend in theaters. You should go to the theaters, support films in theaters. And so yeah, we wanted to celebrate the release of the last Mission Impossible film with talking things that are not Mission Impossible from Tom Cruise.
Ironically so.
Yeah,
We do have some comments here.
of
Our
course.
friend Josie has her own recently watched pile, I guess you could say.
Yes.
With the Killer of Sheep, which I think just got a Criterion release.
Yes.
Safe Men from '98, Rosetta from '99. I think that's the one that's on Criterion too. Sidewalk Stories, Morven Collar, which is the Lynn Ramsey film.
Love that movie.
That movie took forever to come out, like, on Blu-ray, and it was finally put out by Fun
Fun
City.
City. Yeah.
The movie Underground, My Brother's Wedding, which I think that's a Charles Burnett film. And then Opening Night, I know for sure is a
Cassavetes.
Cassavetes film. That's in the Cassavetes box set, the one from Criterion, starring, of course, Gina Rowlands.
Yeah,
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, how's Adeline? Adeline's doing good. She's one more month, she'll be 3 years old.
Goes by fast.
It does, doesn't it? She is at this point right now laying in bed. It looks like she's actually asleep. Maybe
She's faking. She's playing possum.
Yeah. One day when she just looks into the camera and is like,
Yeah. It's like in that movie. This is a reference in that movie Fracture with Anthony Hopkins and Ryan Gosling.
that is a fucking pull.
This is a pull. There's a moment during the climax of the movie. I think it's Anthony Hopkins like looks like directly at a like security camera that I think he's supposed like he's not supposed to know it's there, but he knows it's there, and he
Yeah.
he like waves at it or something
I-
just to play with them.
As one of the few people that knows the movie you're talking about, because this was like a very like under the radar thriller that came out in like the 2000s.
I think 2007, maybe.
Yeah. So as somebody that knows that movie, because I worked at a movie theater when it came out, I have the movie poster in my collection because I worked there. That's only
Nice.
because I worked there.
You're the only one.
I am the only one. So thank you for bringing up the past. You should have brought that up on Movies Down Memory Lane instead.
True.
But yes. So Adeline's doing great. She's just growing up so fast. She's the sweetest girl in the world. But we leave that sentimental stuff for Movies Down Memory Lane. We are on the Unwatched Pile, and if you have not listened or watched this show, what we do on this show is me, Andrew, and a guest usually, but just me and Andrew this week, pick a film out of our collections that we have not seen. Stupid, right? Why do we own something we haven't seen? Well, this is a common thing that us rabbit film collectors do these days. You know, we buy things out of curiosity. We're so curious, and we're like, dude, this just looks awesome. I need to just buy it. So we do that a lot, and so sometimes they just get clogged up and they get left on the shelf, and it's unfortunate. But we're using this show as a way to, reinvent ourselves, make sure that we're not letting them films die on the shelf. So what we do is we pick one, we watch it, we come here to discuss, and then we pair that film with something we have seen in our collections that makes up as a nice double feature. So this week, it looks like me and Andrew decided to go artsy. You know, go artsy / like Criterion collection. Both of these are Criterion films.
It's a double Criterion bonanza, I guess.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, we just had their August announcements this week as well, so I guess that kind of works into it.
Sure.
But Steven, which one of us are going to go first? We're going to flip a coin or battle it out?
Okay, Fillmore?
1, 2.
Can we do that through this?
Yeah,
actually, rock, paper, we can do rock, paper, scissors.
That's very true.
Here we go. Ready? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Ooh,
and you delayed on purpose.
I think maybe just our cameras. But
or you want to go first or second?
I can go first. It's fine.
Okay. All right.
I can go first. So for my pick, I've said this many times on Chasing Labels and just here in general, that there are many directors who I feel so intimidated by that I got to be ready to take on their work because their stuff is so overwhelmingly, artistic, if you will, that you can just be overwhelmed by it because you won't be able to take in the information that you need. So I thought I would do that with one of those directors, and one that's always come up for me is Andrei Tarkovsky. I say that, yet I've seen like a good portion of his work now, but it's like you watch one Tarkovsky, then you got to wait a while and then watch another one. It's like you got to reset the juices, you got to reset the batteries. And this time I watched his movie Mirror from 1975. And this is a movie I've had in my collection for about 4 years or so. So it hasn't been in my unwatched pile for too long. And I've seen, several of Tarkovsky's films. I've seen Ivan's Childhood. I've seen Solaris. I've seen Stalker. I've seen Nostalgia. I've seen even his last film, which I think was it Winter Sleep? Maybe I'm getting him confused with Bergman.
That's a Bergman film.
Yeah, should probably look this up before I start making guesses. But I
thought Nostalgia is his last film, isn't it?
I don't think it is. I think it's one of The Sacrifice. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because remember one time, I mean, this is dating us back. When we used to do Cinema Discovery Project, we did a whole episode on like big time directors' last films, and I watched The Sacrifice for it. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was his last film before he passed it, but this one was done about 11 years or so before he passed. He passed away in 1986, I think in his mid to late 50s or so. But this was done obviously back in the mid 70s, and it talked about a film that is incredibly contemplative about looking back at one's life.
Yeah.
Looking back at one's life. So you've seen these types of movies before. I won't list them off because I don't want to give away perhaps what I chose for my pairing, but you've seen these types of movies done by directors before where there's these films that look back on one's life, that are reminiscent on one's life, that kind of traverse one's life. But when it's Tarkovsky, you're not just doing that. He's not just doing one thing, he's doing many things. And in this movie, Mirror, um, obviously the title itself is metaphorical. You know what I mean? Because when you look in a mirror, you see your reflection, but you not only see your reflection, you see the opposite of things. If you think about the whole mirroring effect when you're talking about cameras and you're talking about all that kind of stuff. But in this movie, you're traversing different parts of not only I think this person's life, but just kind of life in general. And it's really tough to describe this movie without you seeing it because there's no real plot to it. There's no structure to it. You're kind of bouncing around from different time frames, different timelines to different characters. And you're just kind of seeing almost this out of body experience. Um, I just want to let me actually read the back here. I know we don't do that here, but I think for Tarkovsky, you kind of have to. A subtly ravishing passage through the halls of time and memory, Andrei Tarkovsky's sublime reflection on 20th century Russian history is as much a poem composed in images or hypnagogic hallucination as it is a work of cinema. In a richly textured collage of varying film stocks and newsreel footage, the recollections of a dying poet flashes before our eyes, his dreams mingling with scenes of childhood, wartime, marriage, all imbued with the mystic power of a trance. So that's kind of what I'm kind of trying to get at here is that you're seeing many images and moments and almost anthological type of things through the eyes of a dying person who's having almost a, kind of near death experience or death experience where your life is flashing before your eyes, if you will. But
Yeah.
it's poetic, it's beautiful, it's subtle, it's thematic, it's you know theological, philosophical, it's all of those things that you've come to know if you know Tarkovsky's work. But what is so magical about this movie is the images in it. The imagery in this movie, like every frame is almost like a painting, like
Mm.
a beautiful painting you would hang in a museum where there's nature shots of being outside in a field, or whether it's indoor shots of just like the way the mise en scène is set up. There's even a moment in this movie where the camera is situated and then there are several rooms like far away, like they're consecutive. So you're getting like, yeah, like almost like that image within an image within an image type of setup.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that shot from Citizen Kane where Orson Welles just does it just for the heck of it, where it's that mirrored shot of just a long hallway of rooms. And what's so brilliant about this movie is that it's so beautiful, so poetic, and yet you kind of don't really know what's going on most of the time in it because the scenes don't really matter. It's the mood, it's the vibe, it's the feeling, and that's what you get with art house avant-garde cinema. Is it's not really about plot, it's not really about characters. It's cinema in its purest form, which I think moves us in various emotional ways. And it's tough to kind of explain that to people without them experiencing for themselves. That's what really I get out of art house cinema. That's what I get out of avant-garde cinema. I absolutely loved this movie just as an experience watching it.
Mm.
Like I said, just being able to appreciate movies for the beautiful art form they are visually, that's the most I get out of a film like this from Tarkovsky. There are other directors who similarly do that, and perhaps I'll talk about one later on when I pair up with this. But yeah, it's truly a masterclass in that regard. And yet again, it is touching on certain things about like the history of Russia during the 20th century, particularly World War II, particularly also somewhat autobiographical for Tarkovsky too. He was born, I think, in the 30s, so he kind of lived through certain big time Russian things like World War II, like living in Soviet Russia. living within communist Russia, all those kinds of stuff. So the movie is obviously hitting on those themes too, but it is also hitting on life itself, and particularly in this movie, it follows a mother character. That's who we kind of see mostly in this movie, is a mother character that we're seeing throughout these scenes. I just found that to be incredibly interesting. This idea that, how closely related we are to our relationship with our mothers throughout our lives. If indeed you have, good parenting, not everybody does, but if you do have good, strong parenting, um, this movie is definitely hitting on those themes. And what's interesting is I think it's Tarkovsky's father who's narrating the movie and using some of his poetry that that is being, like, said over certain scenes as well. It's truly, like, a magical, surreal type of film where someone's reciting poetry over imagery that's also telling a story. Tarkovsky's doing a lot in here, and
Yeah.
he's doing it with complete and utter control throughout the movie, which is fascinating to me looking at it from a film perspective, a filmmaking perspective. I'm like, this director knows what he's doing. He has complete control over this. He's not just throwing images on the screen because they look pretty. He's doing it on purpose, which some directors do that and some directors don't. But yeah, I found this to be absolutely amazing. This is the Criterion Blu-ray that came out a couple of years ago. It's got a entire hour and 42-minute documentary on here that was done by Andrei Tarkovsky's son about his father that came out in 2019. And then the second disc has a documentary about the cinematographer. There's archival interviews in here from the screenwriter and the director and Tarkovsky as well. It's really beautiful film. I'm curious if they're going to give this an upgrade because I feel like visually it would be stunning. This does have a new 2K digital restoration, obviously rather recent because this came out rather recently. But still, I think Tarkovsky's work is so visual that I would not mind double dipping on something like this in the future. But yeah, that's Tarkovsky's Mirror. As you can see here, just the mirror image on it. You know what I mean? You have the image down here, and then you have its mirrored vision of image up there. It's the digipack too, which I always like the thick digipacks from Criterion. I don't know how you feel about that, Steven.
No, I'm a fan too. When they do them normal,
Yeah,
sometimes they like to be.
sticking out
Lately, they've
long.
been trying to be a little bit weird about it, but
Yeah, and you've got super thick book. Like this thing
yeah,
is rather hefty, and you've got certain imagery in here, certain imagery here on the back. Obviously, super visual release. And I know Tarkovsky's work's been released pretty consistently now over the last few years from different companies. I know
yeah.
Criterion has put out a bunch.
Kino's put out a good amount.
Kino's got a couple like Nostalgia, and I think The Sacrifice as well.
I have both of them
And
releases.
I
Yeah,
think in Europe they've been released as well,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
But yeah, that's Tarkovsky's Mirror. I thought I would finally watch it, slowly making my way through Tarkovsky's work. Obviously, he has other stuff like Andrei Rublev is incredibly long, incredibly long. I watched that. Um,
That's one of the few I've seen. I've seen that. I've seen Ivan. What's it?
Ivan's Childhood, which is I think is
Ivan's
one of his
Childhood.
earliest works.
Yeah,
I think it was the first one I bought. I bought Solaris first, and then I waited forever to watch Solaris. I think I watched Solaris
for the
maybe
Unwatched Pile, I
for one
think
of the Unwatched Piles. Yeah,
early
so
ones. Yeah,
so that's interesting to me. But yeah, Tarkovsky, he's like master's level type of filmmaking. Not for
yeah.
everyone.
Well,
You almost need to work your way up to him. He's like the final boss in a video game.
sure. Between him and David Lynch,
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
there's certain directors that I find so artistically intimidating that they scare me
yeah,
just thinking about their work.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, look,
David
like
Lynch, a
the
few
way
others.
you were describing, you know, this film, like about like he knows what he's doing. Like that's what we call vision. Like that's what a
Mm,
filmmaker's supposed to have, and that's what we strive. That's what we hope for as film goers. That's what we're looking for from filmmakers. Like we're not looking for more of the same, or we're not necessarily looking for like something that could just fade into everything else. That especially these days when there's so much coming out, we're looking for distinct vision, and that's not just visual. Like the cinematography looks different than anything else I've seen. But like the way they tell stories,
Yeah,
like that's
the way pushing the medium or
yeah,
utilizing the medium in a unique way,
yeah,
I feel it sometimes gets lost. And there are still directors still doing that today, but I don't
sure.
think they're as
I,
well known or are getting the
yeah,
attention that they deserve.
yeah. I was gonna say they're either in the indie realm
Or art
um,
house stuff.
or yeah, or I think of filmmakers. Well, let me not start naming things because I don't want to ruin your pick.
No, no,
But
no, but I'm just thinking, for example, like, right now, the Cannes Film Festival's going on, that's when you get a kind of a lot of those movies.
sure,
Like,
I
the
think
direct
I think Ari Aster's a guy with a
yeah,
very unique vision.
Ari
You know,
Aster, Julia Ducournau,
yeah,
who they both have new films that are coming out this year.
yeah.
Certain other visionary filmmakers, as they say. Um, there's still people pushing the medium out there, and they're just not getting the notoriety that they probably should. And a lot of them are taking elements from people like Tarkovsky, because
Sure.
Tarkovsky is kind of like, film school stuff. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
stuff you
yeah,
study.
yeah, exactly. Like him or Fellini or
Mm,
people like that that had such an effect on cinema that if you study it at all, that you're going to have to come across them at some point, and they're always going to have a profound effect on you in some way because what they're doing is so different from everybody else. Jean-Luc Godard is another one that
right.
like they're what they do is so different. Um, so yeah, I mean, what you said about Mirror is some of the things you said it really kind of play into my pick. When
Mm,
you talk about vision
yes.
and about how
Talk about visionaries.
well
Mm,
visionaries, but like the fact that when you said like pure cinema, like something like this is a pure form of cinema where it's very visual and you're enjoying it for that. Well, my film first time pick is a silent film, and that is, I mean, that's the birth of cinema. That is pure cinema. That's when cinema was purely mostly visual. Yeah, you had music and sometimes it would be like sound effects or something, but like purely usually it's just a visual thing, and it's the beginnings. So that was when it was at its infancy and was people were learning how to tell stories. And I think one of the early filmmakers that learned and well set the stage for a lot of filmmakers going forward is Carl Theodor Dreyer. And this is, I think, one of his lesser. I mean, it's known with cinephiles, but like we typically talk about some of his other films, like Passion of Joan of Arc is his big one, or I'm blanking for some reason.
a vampire.
Vampire. And he's got some other ones that people really, really love. But this one was one I hadn't seen yet, and it's been in my collection for a very long time. It's a pretty early Criterion. It's 706, and that is Master of the House. Didn't I mean honestly, like I know when I buy things, I look into them and I'm like, there's a reason. But honestly, I think I bought this because it was Carl Theodor Dreyer and I loved Vampire. And I was like, I'm just going to buy all his stuff. So I didn't even remember what this movie was about. But essentially, it's just a simple comedy drama story set in this house or apartment. And you just follow the day-to-day of a family. It's a wife who takes care of her husband and two children, a girl and a boy. And it's really just watching their life. And what you come to find out is that the husband is for some reason become very overwhelmingly, as they say in the movie, tyrannical, very bossy, very just rude, and just runs the house like he's the king. And everybody's got to do everything for him. He's not happy about anything. And then he goes off and goes to work, and then everybody all day, the wife all day is just worried about making sure he's happy when he gets home. But he's never happy. He's always complaining. He's always got something that's wrong. And so the film, as I watch the film, what you learn is, at the beginning, it has these like, cards that come up that kind of intro the movie, talking about this story is about a hero, the real heroes of the world. And I think that it's obviously pointing out the wife in the story is women are the real heroes of everyday life. You know, what they do when the husbands are not around, what they do to keep them happy. And of course, this is set in 1925. You know, this is a different time. You got to think about the time period we're in and the traditional structure of what the family life would be. The man goes out, works, provides, and comes home, and it's women are expected to take care of the house and make sure everything the kids are taken care of and all that stuff. There's a structure there. And so this film for its time is really looking at that and kind of saying, well, that's not all right. Like, women have a lot to say and have a lot to bring other than just taking care of the man and taking care of the kids. And so in the film, the wife gets put through the ringer and then finally decides that she's gonna take a leave of absence for herself, you know, and then it throws everything into a kind of a whirlwind for the man. You know, he doesn't know what to do. He just never had to take care of himself, you know, at least for a while now, you know. And so it's like, it's a very simple film, and it's not really something that you can like get to, like, if you try to describe it like I'm doing, get people too excited about it. Like, it's just one of them things where if you can read the underlying message that's going on in the film, I think that it's exciting that this film was made for its time. I think that it's got a lot of people would say like feminist values in it, and for this time, that's a very, for a male filmmaker to put that into stories. I mean, which, you know, Joan of Arc. I mean, that in itself is a story right there. It got, you know, feminist qualities. So, yeah, this is not on the level of Vampire. I don't think that the characters in the story are as interesting as some of his other works. I think Joan of Arc's like masterpiece. Like that's a 5-star film. Like, that movie's just so visually stunning. It's got so much going for it. But the acting and the message in this film, I thought was just really ahead of its time, you know, and even in just for as a simple film that's only set essentially in one place, he does so much with it. There's like a scene where you see the wife go down to clean the clothes, like early on in the film, and I'm like, man, this is lit so like interesting. Like, it's almost like a fucking cave. Like, she's going down in a cave and like having to, and I'm like, this is kind of scary looking for this house, you know. But just like to see the wife go through what she goes through in this film, and then, you know, for the time, this was different. You know, you see this type of plot a lot through the years after this, where it's, you know, husband doesn't realize he's doing something wrong and then sees the error of his ways, and then he changes for the good, you know, and comes, you know, but you know, and that's one thing about this film, and I know you watched this too, Andrew. I know you watched it. Yeah. That there is something to it that I think is aged poorly, that there's this idea of like the man had something wrong happen to him, so it's almost excusing it. Like the women in the film, or the wife tries to excuse his behavior because he lost his business. He had businesses, he lost them, and she just like kind of takes up for him until she doesn't, until she decides to leave. But
Right.
like, but yeah, some of that's in there. I mean, I guess it's there to make a point, but yeah, please tell me what you think. What you think?
Yeah.
Of that?
So Master of the House, I remember when that movie, like, I remember when it was announced that it was coming out on Criterion and people were very excited about it. I knew like relatively little about Carl Theodore Dreyer, and yeah, it came out in 2014. So we're dating ourselves about 11 years now to when that Blu-ray came out. But as you said, it obviously had been available much earlier in the collection, because would you say it was number
706?
706? Actually, that may have been around when it came out. But anywho, um, I knew him particularly from his work with Passion of Joan of Arc and
Yeah.
Vampire, because they're two like iconic films that like everybody says you have to watch if you want to get into like
Early
silent
cinema.
cinema,
Yeah.
classic uh, cinema, and stuff like that. And The Passion of Joan of Arc is such. It's tough to describe that movie because there are moments of that movie that are just breathtakingly powerful.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that Master of the House feels so different from that.
Yeah.
It feels well, it's based on a play, I think,
It
and it
is.
feels incredibly play-like.
It is.
Like you said, Steven, it's set in, like, a few indoor locations. It's usually people just talking to each other back and forth, and then we move on to another scene. That's
Yeah.
basically how plays kind of work, on the stage. But what is interesting is about the movie is it is hitting on, like, contemporary things of relationships, particularly between particularly in the sense, traditional relationship between men and women, but any type of relationship, we can, you know, translate that to a modern time, whether it is a same-sex couple or opposite couple or whatever the case may be. It's at the core of it, it's about relationships and about the imbalance of relationships, really. Because you've got the man who, like you said, tyrannical, abusive, toxic, constantly berating his partner, constantly, saying that, she's not doing good enough of job and just picking apart every single thing she does. But what
Mhm.
is interesting is that us as an audience viewer is we see what she's doing throughout her day. Like we
Yeah.
see all of the stuff she's doing. The laundry, the cleaning, taking care of all of the little children, keeping the household together, and basically he just has to come home. And then when he comes home and something is not to his liking, the smallest thing, like the food isn't the right temperature
Yeah.
or whatever, or like the kid,
His
like a
his shoes
kid's not doing something.
his shoes got a hole in it, it's
Yeah,
like,
it's like every little thing he's just picking on her, and it
yeah.
almost feels like if he's taking out his frustrations on
Yeah.
in his own life out on someone else, and
Exactly.
she just happens to be right there. And we
Yeah.
see this happen throughout the generations. I mean, it's nothing new to see this type of abusive, toxic relationship going on. We see it all the way to this day. It's just nowadays, it's kind of on the world stage with the way in which we're all connected because of the internet. So
Yeah.
we can like see people talk about their relationships, people videotape their relationships, people post it online. So we
Yeah.
see all of this stuff happening. But you put yourself in 1925, and I believe it's I forgot where Carl Theodor Dreyer is from.
I believe he's
Is he
from
from Germany?
Germany or Denmark or something like
Yes,
that.
yeah, something like that. So you gotta put yourself in that type of cultural mindset of the 20s where things typically happened behind closed doors. Things weren't really played out in a public thoroughfare. They weren't like
Yeah.
out in the open. Maybe your neighbors knew, family knows. For example, in this movie, I mean, there's a whole like kind of underplot of where this nanny character is
Yeah.
gonna do something about it. And she's gonna tell the wife's family about it because they don't know about it. And she's gonna do something about this situation. She's kind of also the hero of the story too, because she kind of like beats this guy into better shape, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's like someone has to take
She
control of the
she
situation.
yeah, she because the wife has been so, just worn down and then is out of commission, she literally kinda gets sick physically from how much she's been kinda run through the ringer. This nanny character just to kinda comes in and fucking Mrs. Doubtfires the place,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's just like, "Look, you're gonna go but you're doing this, you're doing that, and I'm gonna tell you it straight," like and that's yeah.
Yeah,
It
and you're right. Carl Theodor Dreyer was from Denmark. He is
Denmark,
Danish.
okay.
And yeah, so it's like she takes it upon herself to do something about the situation. And we see kind of these things happen in real life too, where some type of family member or someone's got to step in to assist in
So
these dire circumstances,
somebody with
depending on the severity of what's
somebody
going
with
on.
somebody with perspective.
Yeah,
Um,
someone with objectivity.
I mean, but it's like, and that's what's funny about that is I think in films later, a lot of times the older person that's involved in it gets looked at as like too traditional and don't know what they're talking about. But in this case, they actually look at the elder statesman as somebody that has wisdom.
Which is fascinating to me.
You know,
You would think the older person who and when I'm talking elderly is that she took care of the husband character when he was a little kid. So
yes,
that's
she
like
said
how long she's been around in the
yeah, she talked
situation.
about how she was like, "I used to give you whoopings." Like, like then he's
Yeah.
like, "I could give you a whooping now."
So she's from a
Like
she's from an even older, more traditional generation than what
Yeah,
you would assume the 1920s would be, and even then, that's traditional from a modern perspective.
yeah,
So, Carl Theodor Dreyer is really being rather progressive in this film when it comes to the relationships between all of these people, whether it be between a husband and wife, or whether it be between, someone of an older generation and a younger generation at that time. So really, a lot of forethought here, a lot of stuff that can be extrapolated into today. And I do want to stress that it is a silent film.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know if Steven feels like this, but when you're watching a silent movie, it's a completely different experience than when you're watching a modern film
yeah.
in terms of like pacing and stuff like that.
Sure.
Like,
And that's why I was bringing when you said about like the purity of cinema, and this is the pure. This is like it's like a newborn child. This is
yeah,
that pure. Silent film is that time where, like I said, people were learning how to tell stories, and of course, the limitations of the technology, made them have to be creative. And we could get into a whole discussion about this because I saw this video the other day, and it was about music, but it was similarly equating how the furtherment of technology has caused the music, and in what I was trying to say, film, with the further, with AI and things, is with that further bringing of technology comes less creativity. And so, but with and some might argue with me about that, but we can make that a whole video someday. But
yeah, I'll say that's a whole different argument.
as a
It's not.
whole,
I'll be honest. I agree with you in this idea that the further we get away from that does
further we
tend to
get away
happen.
from humans doing more work to actually make the things, the less creative it is, because that's where creativity comes from. Is from humans, not from machines. I'm sorry, but we'll get back to that another time. But like the purity of this, where people have to come up with a way to convey the story, and they can't just have title cards up all the time. It would get boring. So the
Yeah.
dialogue is limited, and most things have to be conveyed through looks, and that's where
Oh yeah.
a good director has to direct his actors to do the right things, and they can't look back at it. They can't look at, oh, let's go look at the dailies, or they just have to do it in the moment. And that's where that's why this is such a pure way of time for
Oh
film.
yeah. Silent filmmaking is completely different than the way talkies would be.
Yeah,
Um, Especially because we all know kind of like stories. They made movies about this where a lot of the actors and directors and actresses didn't make the transition from silent era to talkies because they
yeah,
couldn't do it because it was so different. You know what I mean? Singing in the Rain is all about that.
exactly.
Where they couldn't they because it was so different, so vastly done, so vastly different in terms of filmmaking and acting styles
Uh,
and all this kind of stuff.
a movie I did on here, The Artist.
Yeah, with the kind that talked about it as well.
Yeah,
Very interesting stuff. Glad you pulled out a silent film. Always looking for some silent movies.
yeah. I've only done one other one. It was the Laughing Man.
Oh yeah, The Man Who
Yeah.
Laughs.
The Man Who Laughs, yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did that one early on in this show. So I was like, yeah, let me bring out a silent film. I love Carl Theodor Dreyer, and yeah, this isn't my favorite of his work that I've seen so far, but it is really good, and it's got a lot to say. And like you said, it is a different. If you're getting into silent films, you do need to come with that, just like Tarkovsky. You got to come with a mindset
Yeah,
that you
certain context because
that with Tarkovsky, it's more about like letting the movie take you on a trip. I think with
right,
silent films,
you got to
you
be
have
engaged with it.
you got to be engaged, and you have to also, I think, engage your imagination. Like you got to understand that the movie can only convey so much to you, so you have to like fill it in with what you can understand about human emotion and human empathy and all the things that the movie's trying to show you. You have to feel it within yourself. So like that's why it's tough for people these days, because they're not engaging. They're passively watching movies mostly these
Yeah, I
days.
mean, literally every single day on social media, I see people complaining that they went to the movie theater and someone was on their phone the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I see people in the comments saying like, I saw this today actually. Someone said, "I paid for a ticket. If I want to be on my phone the whole time, like I can." And I'm like, "Oh, we've lost the war." I mean, if
Yeah,
that's
I
the
know.
mindset people go into going to the movie theater now, I mean, you can't
Well,
change that
there's that,
mindset.
but it's just like do you think that everybody thinks that way? How about all
Yeah,
the people that paid tickets to see the movie and don't want their phones in there? Like, let that be a sanctuary for that. The only place we can have that experience now. Like, at least give us that. If you want to sit and watch that movie and be on your phone half the time, then just wait for it to come to home. Like,
yeah, it's like,
you know,
I don't know why they're there if they're not there to experience the movie on the big screen. Like, that's the whole point
exactly.
of going.
What's the point?
I
What
mean,
other
what's the
reason?
Yeah, exactly, like, and to me, we talked about this pre all this modern stuff time, but, like, movie theater etiquette was already kind of on its way out,
Yeah,
and then it just got, like, progressively worse,
yeah,
now.
yeah,
But man, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have that mindset that they can do whatever they want if they pay a ticket
yeah.
to go to the movies.
We're gonna have video just about the state of film or something like that here
Well,
soon.
even yeah, someone like I think Kevin Smith was just on Michael Rosenbaum's
Oh yeah,
podcast talking about the movie theater experience and how and what's wrong with it now and why movie theaters are kind of declining and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And yeah, it's a very interesting, much longer conversation, and it's something that I think has been slowly growing and growing over the last few years, and it's getting more prominent
It
now
gets
than ever
bigger
before.
as theaters become less, start dying more. People start,
Yeah, if you
the
will.
voice.
The box office numbers aren't quite the way they were before. The audience is not quite the way they were before.
Yeah,
People are waiting. People are waiting because movies are going from theatrical exhibition to being available to rent at home in less than 3 weeks.
yeah.
I've seen 2 weeks,
It's
and
bullshit.
it's like that's what people are. If you keep doing that, that's what people are going to get used to, and they're just going to wait for that.
And
You know,
as
this is the
somebody
whole
that barely
point.
can get out to go to movies in the theater, it doesn't bother me. I can wait 3 months. It's
Yeah,
fine
it's not
or
3 months
whatever.
now. It's
It's
3 weeks.
That's
Like
what I'm
it's like
saying, like, I can wait. I don't need if there's a movie I can't get to the theater to see, that's fine. I'll wait till it comes out. Like, give movies that chance. But let's
yeah.
move on. Let's
Corin
move on.
Humboldt says, "I go to matinees, hardly anyone there most times." That's
Yeah.
true.
Oh,
Um,
I love a good matinee too, and
yeah.
that's fine, but um, yeah, it's tough, man. As much as I want people in the theaters, sometimes I want it to all to myself. But
Mm,
let's move on. We need to move on. So,
right.
back to you. Tell us what you're pairing with that mirror. Is it going to be a
So,
movie with mirrors in it too?
not really, but similar type of vibe, and while I was watching Mirror, I was like, "This feels a lot like this other director's work. This feels like this other director's work." There were a few directors in my head where I'm like, "This is similar vibes, similar type of experience that I'm having while watching this stuff," and the one that kept coming in my mind, and one that is probably most closely related as I was describing Mirror, maybe some of you have guessed, is Terrence Malick.
Mm.
Terrence Malick's film Tree of Life, most specifically.
Ah.
Tree of Life may have been my first Terrence Malick film. Um, and I watched this book, goodness, when it came out back in 2011. And my like 24-year-old mind also wasn't quite ready for this at the time.
I tell you what, I got a complicated history myself with this movie.
The thing is, I loved it. I loved it right off the bat.
I
Like,
didn't.
yeah, and I know Steven, you didn't. I loved it right off the bat, just because at that time I had never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
This was 2011. Like I said, I was 24 years old, just started to get into art house, avant-garde cinema, non-English language cinema, foreign cinema, stuff like that. So I saw this movie and I'm like, this is unlike anything I had ever seen before because it's a dream. You know what I mean? It's a dream on screen. There's no real plot to it. Well, there is a plot, but it's not really about the plot.
Yeah.
It's more about, yet again, we're talking experience, we're talking feeling, we're talking mood, we're talking, to use modern slang, it's a vibe. It's a vibe, if you will.
It's a vibe.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I didn't realize that or traditionally Terrence Malick didn't quite make movies like this. His movies were actually more traditional. If you go back to his work in the 70s,
Yeah.
they're like traditional types of movies,
Well,
like
I mean, even leading up to like Thin Red Line. I mean, it's
Thin
a
Red
war
Line,
movie.
also way more traditional than this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Thin Red Line was the movie he made before this, so this was
Yeah.
like his return to cinema. He had been gone since what, like 1998, I think was Thin Red Line. Um, and Yeah, so his return to cinema, this is completely different. Still incredibly artistic, still incredibly powerful filmmaking, and just unbelievable. So this movie, it's so tough to even describe this movie, Steven. Like, it's about a family, but it's more so about humanity,
Yeah.
which sounds like big conceptual things, big theological, philosophical things, and it is. Literally in this movie, in the first act of this movie, like Terrence Malick shows like the beginning of the universe. Like we're talking big concepts here. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He's not fooling around. But he goes from like the birth of the universe to the dinosaurs to humanity and then to this family that is not only that is also dealing with loss and recollection and looking back at um at their lives, but also dealing with the different natures of humanity, particularly when it comes to raising children. Is a big aspect in this nature versus nurture. If I remember correctly, it's been years since I've seen the movie. You have Jessica Chastain and you have Brad Pitt. I remember this was one of Jessica Chastain's like first kind of roles where people started knowing who she is as an actress. And you have Brad Pitt, who is the nature where he's kind of harsh and realistic and we were talking a little bit about in the like Master of the House, kind of tyrannical, kind of abusive. Yet again, coming from an era, I believe because it was set, I want to say 50s or 60s,
50s or
somewhere around
60s.
there. And then you have Jessica Chastain's character who's an incredibly nurturing, like lovely, angelic um mother who is all about caring and the way in which they frame her in this. Like there's always like the sun at her back, so she's like glowing and things like that. One thing with Terrence Malick's film, especially his modern stuff, he loved the golden hour. He loved those
Oh, yeah.
golden hour shots.
Yeah.
Loved them.
Him and Emmanuel Lubezki just
Yeah,
hanging out.
him in Sunsets, Made in Heaven. Loved
Yeah.
him. And he was always shooting beautiful shots in this movie. I don't know if this was Emmanuel Lubezki. Yes, it
I
is.
believe it. Yeah, I was gonna say
Because
I believe it is. Yeah.
because it says the 4K digital restoration was approved by Terrence Malick and cinematographer Lubezki. There you
Yeah,
go.
he jumped from Terrence Malick movies, then he went over to what's his name?
Inarritu.
Inarritu, did a bunch of movies with him. Now I
Yeah,
don't know what the hell he's doing.
and the one thing that Inarritu did it with, what's that movie that he shot with Leonardo DiCaprio that won him the Oscar?
Revenant. Yeah.
The Revenant, where they basically shot that
He
whole
broke him on that movie.
Yeah, he shot that whole movie in natural lighting,
Yeah.
or to like, for example, the golden hour is sunset, so you got to go and you got to shoot it at sunset. You got to shoot it when you got the light, when you got the time, all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. So it makes filmmaking rather tough because you're battling the elements literally in that movie, The Revenant. But when it comes to Malik, he wants to get certain shots and all that kind of stuff. And what is also notorious with Malik, at least when it came to this type of art house filmmaking, is he would shoot like reels upon reels upon reels of film, not really knowing what the movie was going to look like, what the movie's going to be, and he would basically put it together in the editing room. That's
Yeah.
why a lot of his movies took years to make. That's why a lot of actors would get cut out of movies completely. Notorious, we talked about The Thin Red Line.
Yeah.
There were actors who went to the premiere and they were cut out of the movie completely. I think
Yeah.
Adrian Brody was one of them, or
Yeah.
yeah, and even like George Clooney, you talked about that as well. Um, there are a whole. I think. Do you remember the movie To the Wonder?
Yeah.
I think
That's the one
Rachel
with
Weisz was supposed to be in that movie, and she was cut out completely, or something like that.
yeah.
Um, but anywho, there's a string of Terrence Malick films that he did with The Tree of Life, To the Wonder, Night of Cups, Song to Song, incredibly artistical films, not real plot driven at all, no structure in that regard, all about like narration over beautiful shots, over beautiful scenes, loose plot if there's anything, and it would just be like beautiful shots of actors doing things. But this film here did have a point of a lot of thematical depth to it, typically about life, about, like I said, nature versus nurture when it comes to humanity, and even death as well. There's a whole sequences in this film with Sean Penn, who I believe is like in the afterlife. And it's this beautiful, like lake type natural area of just gorgeous things going on in it. So this movie reminded me heavily of Mirror. But what is fascinating about this is I was talking about Mirror when I was talking about Tarkovsky being in complete and utter control in this movie, and you can feel it. You can feel the artistic expression at work in here. Like everything is perfectly displayed. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Malik is kind of the opposite. Malik is kind of like um expression for the sake of expression, beauty for the sake of beauty, just doing things without any type of real sense of control. Like I said, shooting a bunch of things and then putting it together in the editing room. Whereas opposed to someone like Tarkovsky, is I felt like I was in the hands of a filmmaker, of an auteur, purposely like cradling me as I'm watching the movie. Malik, I feel like is a lot less cradling you as opposed to throwing you into his expansive vision. You know what I mean? Just throwing you into this world of complete and utter beauty. Even if you have no idea what's going on, you're at least in a beautiful, beautiful artistic world. And that's kind of the loose connections I have between these two films. There's so much to be said about Terrence Malick. I know he's gone back to, I think, more traditional filmmaking now. I haven't seen his recent works. I've got to get on that. I'm slacking in that regard, but I always thought Tree of Life was incredibly, incredibly powerful. Um, yeah, I've always really liked it. And I also forgot to mention, what's that movie that you really like, Steven? The New World.
Yes.
The New World is kind of like it's like a half and half to me. Like there's like a plot structure in that movie, but it also has this sense of art house cinema in it, if I remember correctly. And I think that's the film he did. When did he do that? Oh, I have to look. Because I feel like he did that movie.
I think he
Oh,
did that movie after Thin Red Line.
let's see. The New World. I think you may be right.
2003 or 4 or
Yeah, so I
something.
may have been completely. Yeah, 2005. Okay. So he had done Thin Red Line, then The New World, then this movie, I believe. And that's the movie with Colin Farrell.
Yes. Oh. Well, hopefully we get Andrew back here in a minute. But yeah, I'm a fan of the Thin Red Line. Not at first though. The first time I saw Thin Red Line, I wasn't really ready for it yet. I was at a time in my film watching that I was not ready for an art house movie, and so when I saw the preview, I saw that it had Sean Penn and I saw that it had Brad Pitt in it, and I thought it had to be good, and I was totally like caught off guard. It was not the movie I thought it was going to be. So I really hated this movie. I basically called it garbage all the time. And then years went by, and as my film watching grew, I started to understand and appreciate this film. I really like, um, even the beginning where it builds up, and shows you the beginning of time and creation and stuff. I love that because I love the idea that Terrence Malick's trying to show us how small we are in this world, and how far we've had to come to be where we're at. So I really like that about the film, and I like how you get really swept up in it. But yeah, so interesting pick. Hopefully I'll be talking with Andrew again in here in a second. I don't know if maybe he lost internet or what. I think we are getting him back right now.
Yeah, I'm back. My whole computer completely crashed on me.
Cool.
Yeah, the whole thing shut off completely.
Nice. Well, I was expressing my my history of with this movie and how I hated it at first because I was not ready to watch it,
Mm,
and then I grew to appreciate it. So,
yeah.
but
But anyway, I was
yeah,
pretty much wrapping up what I was saying about this anyway.
yeah,
But yeah. So technical difficulties aside, I couldn't handle the Malik. Basically, couldn't handle it.
Mm,
It's a
yeah.
Tarkovsky and Terrence Malick would be a hefty double feature, but obviously they're definitely connected.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Well, yeah. This is a Criterion edition. I'm gonna break it up though with my
Okay,
my pairing.
good.
No more Criterion. With my second, yeah, I decided to go a different route. But so I was thinking about obviously about how Master of the House really delves into the dynamics of a married couple, you know, and how each person is going through things and how they seem to not be on the same page. I think that's something that we've seen a lot in films. There's been a lot of films about married couples and I mean, there's literally the marriage story, with Adam Driver and was Scarlett Johansson.
Yep.
Yeah, like there's been many. Me and Andrew love the Before trilogy. We love that. The third film is essentially another delves into that realm, and a number of films I felt like delve into the subject, but not in the way that I was looking for. I was looking for something that really got into that idea of like understanding that each person is their own person and that they both go through things that affect each other. And I think that was personified pretty well in Sam Mendes's film Revolutionary Road,
Nice. Love
from
it.
2008, starring, of course, the Titanic couple, Kate Winslet.
Both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, exactly. Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. And so in this film, it's set in like the mid 50s, and they're a couple that's from the outside looking in, very like a perfect couple, perfect match. They look great. They act like they're perfect for each other, but really they're both very unhappy. Leonardo DiCaprio works at like a job that his dad had. His dad has passed, and now he's working at the same like company, and is kind of feeling like he's in a dead end place. While Kate Winslet, who's the beautiful stay-at-home wife that's not really got much going on other than taking care of husband and kids, she's feeling lost. She strives to be. She wants to be an actress. And at the beginning of the film, she stars in a play that ends up not being that great. And she's starting to feel trapped. She's starting to feel unfulfilled in life. And he's of course feeling like he's unfulfilled, and they're both just taking it out on each other. Now, of course, there's a difference here between this film and Master of the House. The wife is just taking the beating from the man the whole time. But in this film, Kate Winslet gives it as much as she gets it. She's unhappy. She wants to do more with her life, but she feels like the life that they set up for themselves has not allowed them to live a full life. She almost, and I think it's just honesty. And I think people that have kids understand this, is that you love your kids and you do anything for them, but then you're also your own person. And that sometimes you feel like you can't do anything for yourself anymore. And I think that's what's happening to both of these people, is they're both chose a life that has not allowed them. When they decided to start a family, they both they didn't live long enough on their own. It's the argument against marrying too early, like in a way, like it's like, you should wait until you're ready to commit to having a family. And so in this case, both of these people chose a traditional pathway and realized that they're not traditional. And now they're trying to figure out how to stay together and come to a place where they can be happy. And in the film, they both, at first, it's the idea is they decide that they're going to move to Paris, and that Kate Winslet's going to take on a job, and the job that she's going to take on can support the family until Leonardo DiCaprio figures out what he wants to do. And yeah, I'm not going to say any more about the story, but essentially what I grabbed onto, of course, is that deconstruction of the two people in a marriage and what um how hard it is to do that. And I think Sam Mendes in just the story, like this film really understands the ins and outs and what makes it so difficult. And it's just so well photographed and performed. Yeah, Andrew, your feelings
Indeed.
on this pairing?
Yeah, good pairing. Good pairing because Revolutionary Road is a movie I feel like people don't talk about enough. Considering that it stars, two incredibly well-known actors and actresses, and a pairing that people know of because of
And
the movie Titanic,
yeah, and then like even the supporting cast, David Harbour, early David Harbour
Yeah.
is
And
in
of
this.
course, you've got the scene stealers in this movie. In what's now I can't remember his name.
Oh, uh, Michael Shannon,
Yeah, Michael Shannon. Completely
and it's
blanking on his
also
name.
got Catherine Hahn in it too.
Yeah, and yeah, Michael Shannon in this movie is like this
He's an
guy.
eccentric kind of like he says he's a mathematician.
Yeah, apparently he was like a great mathematician, like a great mind, and then
Yeah,
I think he had like a psychotic break, and
yeah.
he went to a mental institution, and they did shock therapy on him.
He plays Kathy Bates' son in the film.
Yes, Kathy Bates, a freaking
Yeah,
Oscar
she's in
winner,
it
is
too.
also in the movie.
Yeah,
And what's interesting is like everybody treats him like,
he's a
like
child.
yeah, but he's really like incredibly intuitive, like
He's
incredibly
self-aware.
smart.
He's very
The thing is he's
self-aware.
got no filter or like
Yeah,
social timing, you
yeah,
know, and he very much kind of tells it like it is. He talks about things that everybody's hiding inside.
yeah.
Like no one's bringing up like the elephant in the room. Meanwhile,
He's
he'll
got
bring it
he
up.
he plays the nanny that's in Master of the master
Yeah,
of the
pretty
house.
much.
He's
And
kind of the nanny for that.
he was nominated for an Oscar for this film. I think he's only in like 4 scenes, maybe.
He's not in the movie a lot.
He's
No.
not in the movie a lot. And sometimes I go back just to watch his scenes.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a great scene of like him and DiCaprio walking in like the woods together. Um, and they just having this conversation because I believe DiCaprio's talking about them moving to Paris and stuff like
No,
that.
they're yeah, they're all 3 of them are there. Winslet's
Yeah.
there too. Yeah.
And just like it's very they have a very interesting conversation about life and existential part of life and whatnot. But what is interesting about the movie itself is that I believe it takes place in the 50s,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I don't know if people realize is a notoriously oppressive time to be alive in.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a woman, if you're a minority, if you're anyone who's countercultural at all, very oppressive time. Um, and people like to think of the 50s as like the good old days. I
Yeah.
think they see like Leave It to Beaver and think like that's like the best part of life. And I'm like, yeah, if you're a certain type of person, then yeah, it's great for you, but it's terrible for everybody else.
The
It's
only thing
terrible if
it
you have
was
any
a
type of free thought.
it was the economy was booming in that time, so that's what
That's
people
yeah,
you know,
so at that time is the birth of the suburbs,
yeah.
where people were moving out of the city, moving to the suburbs. The economy was booming because it's the aftermath of World War II. World War II is pretty much the reason that got the United States out of the Great Depression. I mean, we were already trending to getting out of the Great Depression by the late 1930s, but really getting involved in World War II fully boosted us out of the
Yeah.
Great Depression, and that's when you get the baby boomer generation is from that era. That's when
Yeah.
everybody was born, right after that little World War II time frame, and things were booming economically and things like that. I think it's the Eisenhower. No, it's Truman, then Eisenhower. But anywho, there's a lot of good positive things going on there if you're in the right demographic, if you
Sure.
will. You
Of
know what I mean?
course.
And what is interesting is that Leonardo DiCaprio's character is in the right demographic. He's wealthy, good job. He's in the right demographic when it comes to the color of his skin. I mean, he lives in the suburbs. He's got a beautiful wife. He's got everything going for him. Yet he's still so unhappy.
Yeah.
He's so unhappy with his
And that's
life.
what's interesting, and obviously that's where I draw my comparisons is that's just 2 unhappy people very similarly to Masters of the House, and they're both I think, obviously this is the benefit of when, a film that has sound and you can get dialogue and things, you can really flesh out things like this. And I think that if Car Theodore Dreyer was here today, he would make a film like Revolution. If that movie could be made today, it would be like this. It would be way more fleshed out, way more, dialogue heavy, way more delving into why why the husband was so unhappy, and why it's more than just that he's lost his businesses. It's more than that,
Yeah, and you can even extrapolate that to real life scenarios in the modern world. We often see people who you would think have it all, if you will.
yeah,
You know that big quote, you have it all, yet they're still so unhappy uh, to a pretty high degree. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Mental health has become incredibly more talked about now than ever before. Damn sure more than the 1950s. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Back then, they kind of didn't know what to do with you if you were having depression, anxiety, or any type of mental health crisis whatsoever. They would basically put you in a place like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
yeah,
um, kind of like that, and they didn't really know how to treat that. Certainly, medications really didn't exist. Any type of public, consciousness of it really didn't exist,
yeah,
and even something for like marriage issues, like these two people were clearly having marriage issues as well, wasn't really something that you would
no, there
that
was no
you
help
could
for
really
that.
work through. Because I didn't bring up kind of the politics of the time. Very patriarchal society in the 1950s, very patriarchal society in the 1920s with Master of the House. Women could not file for divorce from their husbands
Yeah,
until I think much later on. I want to
yeah,
say 70s or 80s. So at the time in the 50s, if you wanted to get divorced because the marriage was in such shambles, the husband had to be the one to apply for it. You
yeah,
couldn't do it. Women couldn't have their own bank accounts until much later on. It's a whole big thing that I think these movies are kind of hinting at with misogyny, patriarchal
sure,
societies, and masculinity and things like that. Um, yeah, so definitely good pairing. Like two films
yeah.
with different eras with
I,
similar stuff.
Yeah, I even thought about American Beauty as well, Sam Mendes.
Mm.
Like that movie obviously
Uh,
has a little bit more of a perversion to it. Like it's a little bit more delving
of a
into the
fantasy,
yeah,
escapism.
yeah, yeah. There's an escape, but like still there's a family dynamic being deconstructed in that film
Oh
that
yeah,
that I
definitely. That's like the white picket fence family erosion behind the scenes
yeah,
type of movie.
yeah.
Similar, another film like that would be like Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet, yeah. Yeah.
Where like it looks like the white picket fence, nice suburban neighborhood, but meanwhile there's like crazy, insane
Yeah.
things going on
I
behind the
I
scenes.
also I also thought about Bigger Than Life as another option.
I was thinking of that in my head.
But
Bigger
but
than
I
life.
but I thought that this was just too perfect, so I
Mm.
went this way. The one interesting thing too about Revolutionary Road is that they have kids, but the first half of the movie you barely see them, like they're barely there because all we are consumed with is their marriage.
Yeah.
But they have two kids.
It's
You just
almost as if
never
they just had children because that's what that was expected of them at the time.
exactly. So you just barely the movie's telling you that that's not at the forethought of their mind is the kids are not as important as they should be.
Yeah,
Maybe because they shouldn't be parents. Maybe they shouldn't be
probably.
together.
I've always
Like
I mean, this is getting into a whole other I always kind of thought that people really need to kind of work on themselves before they start,
exactly.
having children because, we see this all the time with generations, kind of, putting your own baggage onto your children. We've seen that be explored in documentaries and movies and real life, all that kind of stuff. But good pairing. I really like
Yeah.
that because it's a movie that people don't talk about a lot.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But yeah, we need to move on. We only got a few minutes. We need to talk about Tom Cruise, but that is it for our unwatched portion. Um, yeah, both good pairings. You got an artsy pairing, you got a silent film drama pairing, silent
Yeah.
film and more modern day pairing. So yeah, real quickly, we're going to talk about some Tom Cruise films that are not Mission Impossible that are favorites. I'll start us off. I really love, and I know it's not considered to be the better of the two films, but I really love his role in Color of Money.
Oh, good choice.
Of course, Scorsese coming back and, doing this, sequel to, The Hustler and doing this film and resurrecting that character, and then bringing Tom Cruise in as the new young upstart. I think he's just perfect. He obviously really hones that in through his career, playing these like cocky types, whether it's, Cocktail or of course Top Gun or anything like that, where he plays young, confident,
Yeah.
Center of attention people. He does that perfectly in Color of Money. And it's I think it's a really good sequel that people don't really give enough credit. So that's one of my favorites.
Good one. Good pick.
Which one you got?
Well, you know what's crazy is I saw a tweet the other day that they should do a third, like they should do a sequel to Color of Money where it's Tom Cruise in the Paul Newman role taking on a protege.
You know who it should be? Because I just saw
they said Timothy Chalamet.
No. You know who it should be?
Who?
Michael B. Jordan, because he's ever talking about doing a movie with him.
Oh, that's true.
That would be fucking awesome.
Idea.
And like if get a African American person to be the
I just feel like that they would compare that to Creed so much though, because maybe. It's kind of the similar thing to Creed if you think about it.
We'll get Ryan Coogler to direct it too.
Yeah, I'd see it, but heck,
I would see it, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
I'll go with something of the same era, but something that was kind of an earlier film from him, and that's the movie Risky Business.
Yes.
One of his, I guess you could say, is kind of a breakout film. I just took these off the shelf, so I might as well show them off. Is the Risky Business 4K Criterion. But I like this movie so much because I find it incredibly rewatchable. Tom Cruise, Rebecca De Mornay. It's him basically going through like the teenage angst of the time. But when it comes to teenage angst, I feel like every generation goes through similar types of stuff. Where like he's dealing with like relationship with his parents. He's dealing with like he's trying to get into college. He's dealing with friend stuff, and then he's also dealing with like the sexual coming of age types of things. Takes a bit of a twist on that though when he gets involved with the Rebecca De Mornay character, who is a sex worker of the time, and then he ends up kind of setting up his own type of brothel out of his own home, his own type of little ring there for specific plot reasons. He's not just doing it for the heck of it, but he's doing it. Great soundtrack in this movie. This is the iconic scene. Of course, that he comes sliding in and dancing around when his parents are going on vacation and stuff. What kid doesn't want to like?
I still do it today.
Go crazy.
I still do it today.
Just take those old records off the shelf, man.
Yeah,
that's what you got to do. But I've always really loved this movie. I had it on DVD. I've had it on Blu-ray. I've had it in 4K. Risky Business is. I think every generation needs to watch Risky Business.
Of course,
just because it feels like it suits every generation.
That and Ferris Bueller.
Indeed.
But I'm going to go to probably maybe my favorite of his films that are not. I mean, it might even be my favorite of his films. Few Good Men. Few Good Men. I watched so many times. Directed by Rob Reiner, and it's just one of I love a good courtroom film. That's the one thing. Also, a good kind of mystery. There's somewhat of a mystery. Like, did these guys actually assault this guy in his sleep? We don't. Like we start to learn more about these people as we go through it. But just such a great cast, like him, of course, Demi Moore, who's his friend in the movie? Damn it. It's got Kevin Bacon in it. I know. I'm blanking on the name.
Well, Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, of course, is the villain, of course.
Yeah, Kevin Pollock.
Pollock, that's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
J.T. Walsh is in it. Christopher Guest,
Kiefer
Sutherland. It's a huge cast. And
gracious.
Not only directed by Rob Reiner, written by Aaron Sorkin. So writing.
I was gonna say the screenplay is pretty great.
Just such a great courtroom drama, and just infinite. To me, it's like kind of like Shawshank. Infinite rewatchable, and I take an element from this movie to this day, where when I want to think about something and I'm brainstorming, I carry a bat around with me, just like he does in this.
Gotta get my bat.
Where's my bat? You put it in the closet. Don't ever put this bat in the closet.
Well, I was gonna say, speaking of kind of, I guess maybe not so much courtroom, but a lawyer-esque film, that is The Firm, the Sidney Pollack film.
Nice.
A long film, if I do recall. It's quite a long film. Yeah, 154 minutes. And this is dealing with, I believe he's like a young, like hotshot lawyer, and he joins the firm, if you will. He joins this big time law firm, and apparently there's some corruption, I think, going on in it. If I do remember, I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but I always really liked it. And I think he's like fresh out of law school in it, so he's like kind of that young, idealistic type of lawyer, but he's kind of getting caught up in the dirty game of
Yeah.
law, if you will. I forgot who wrote the novel that this is based
Grisham?
on.
Is that a Grisham?
I think it's John Grisham. Yep, based upon the book by John Grisham. And John Grisham, of course, wrote many, many things. I think him and Stephen King go head to head for how much of their stuff gets adapted.
Time to Kill. Yeah, just tons of them. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the firm, Sidney
Yeah,
Pollack. Sidney Pollack's a director I feel like needs to get more love, in my opinion. He did the movie Tootsie as well. He did Yakuza with Robert Mitchum, which is always great.
Well, let's run down a few more.
Gotcha.
Because I got to go. But also, I love him in Jerry Maguire. It's a sports movie stuff in there, and just really heartfelt. I love Cameron Crowe. Minority Report.
Underrated Spielberg film.
One of the best.
War of the Worlds, also underrated Spielberg film.
Exactly, I agree with you. Both of them are good Tom Cruise Spielberg team ups. Also, I love I know it's controversial because it's not historically accurate, but The Last Samurai is a good movie.
Yeah, everyone thinks that Tom Cruise is the last samurai in The Last Samurai, and he's not. It's Ken Watanabe.
Exactly.
And it's about like late 19th century Japan is when they were transitioning to a more modern Japan, and they were getting rid of the samurai, hence The Last Samurai.
Exactly.
One of my favorites is Born on the 4th of July, Oliver Stone's film. I think it's one of
probably his best
greatest performance.
Probably, yeah.
Where he plays, I think it's, what's his first? Ron Kovic. Based on a true story, bit of a biopic about Ron Kovic, who I believe fought in Vietnam and then became like an anti-war advocate after that. But check this out. Incredible performance. Probably up to that point, his most serious performance. This is when he transitioned from like that young, like you were saying, like things like Risky Business and Top Gun and Color of Money.
His first real adult
real adult role.
Stuff like Days of Thunder came before that too. That's a fun movie.
Days of Thunder is also great. That's
Top Gun.
Really great Tony Scott. For me, talk about serious. You talk about controversial a little bit. Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick. One of my biggest hot takes is like this is the movie that made Stanley Kubrick like my favorite director of all time. Because I watched this movie and I'm like, this movie's incredible in so many ways. Like it's claustrophobic, it's dramatic, it's pushing all the boundaries to the nth degree. Tom Cruise is like mystifyingly haunting in this, as well as Nicole Kidman too. It's a lot to say about this movie. A lot to say about it.
Well, I'll end it on two of his best appearances that are not starring roles.
Oh, here we go.
His spot in the third Austin Powers movie where he plays Austin Powers.
Jeez.
And of course his small role in Tropic Thunder. Amazing.
Nice.
But
nice
that's
reference.
It. Yeah, but that's
don't forget about The Outsiders too.
Oh, well, yeah, his small role in Outsiders is good too. Tom Cruise is way more than just his Mission Impossible.
Legend Persona is also awesome.
Yeah,
so many here to go through.
I really hope that after Mission Impossible, this last mission, I hope he really starts to push himself and get back into that actorly.
Go back to doing Magnolia. I would love to see him do something like that again. I know he's working on a movie with Inarritu right now, or he just did work on it. So I don't know if it's coming out this year.
I think it's next year, maybe. Yeah.
But would be interesting to see what he does with that.
I really want to see him push himself more as an actor because Collateral.
God. Yeah, talk about pushing himself as an actor. Collateral,
that might be his last really great performance. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that is it for this episode of the Unwatched Pile. If you weren't able to watch this, you can, of course, go to the audio platforms, Apple Podcast or Spotify to listen. And, of course, check out Andrew every other week at Chasing Labels. And this coming weekend, every other week, we have Movies Down Memory Lane with our friend Dan Skip Allen as well. So that's it for this Unwatched Pile. And get out of here, guys. go watch some movies that you have not watched in your collection. Do it.